we're 1 minute over, so that's quite good. So welcome to our workshop titled Advanced Collection Management Made Easy. Maybe it should be made easier or less difficult. I can't remember, but there are many permutations on this title. This is an introduction, so we're going to start really slowly and then dip into some of the advanced features of Iris, so you get a bit of a sense of, or an overview of the product, really, of what it can do. There's another workshop on Thursday where we will sort of dig into sort of advanced topics that most gardens or collections struggle with when they want to do things with their data. So today we might talk about some of those things, and of course any questions come with them as we go. So that's why it's a bit of a workshop style, so that we might spend a bit more time on certain topics if people are very interested in certain things. There is a plan, an agenda. Before we start, we can introduce ourselves. On the right side there, Gregg Payton, maybe you see a few words.
I will step out since this is being filmed and they can see me then. I'm Gregg Payton. I'm the plant records and GIS manager with the Dawes Arboretum in Newark, Ohio. I've been there for 23 years, and in 2013 we switched over to IrisBG, and I now operate as a North American representative garden, where I help with the trainings here in this country and field questions from the general audience in this country. So have a fairly good understanding of the product. So yeah, and I like it.
Gregg also, we have a webinar every first Thursday of the month. So Gregg is usually co-host that with me.
So I think I missed once, maybe. I don't know.
Exactly. So my name is Havard Ostgaard. I'm originally Norwegian, so my name actually has some squiggles and stuff, but we have pruned those away to be sort of a bit easier for you. So I am based in the UK. My background is software architecture, but having worked with Iris since for 11-12 years, talked about. I've always been interested in gardening anyway, so it's not like this was forced upon me. so no, this I must say it's a great honor and privilege to work on this sort of challenge to try to create order out of chaos. So today, we're just going to start really slowly. So how many here has never ever seen Iris? Okay, yeah, that's a few. That's so that's why we have sort of building up a bit sort of very basic stuff in the beginning, and then we move over to doing the basic stuff. That there's certain things that you need to be told at least once. Even though when you design software, to make any technology 100% intuitive is possible, but sometimes if you do it completely intuitive, it becomes also very cumbersome when you want to be efficient. So we'll talk a bit about that later. So we're going to learn how to just basically do record keeping on a sort of simple level, and then we're going to do some printing and label management, and then we're going to talk a bit about something that's very specific to Iris. It's called events. It's like a second layer on top of your plant records to build lists and things like that. And then we're going to talk about Garden Explorer, which is the way to share your plant collection with visitors or the public or the world in general. And then also mobile solutions for updating your plant records. And then a bit about online forums, etc. Before I start, just quickly, this is a map of our user community, more or less. I think there's about 140 institutions now worldwide. Is there a pointer to this? Looks like power. Oh, it is, yeah, thank you. I look like a power button, so I switch off everything. Anyway, so here we have North America. This map is online. So if you want to see any gardens using software near you, you can do that. So we have about a similar amount of gardens in Europe as we do in North America. We're having sort of bit of a growth now in Australia, New Zealand, and we have in Korea, etc. So it's a very mixed community from starting from really big institutions. I suppose the biggest in terms of National Trust in England have like 400 historic gardens or something. I can't remember exactly how many, but it's a large amount. And then the Royal Household in the UK, so that's a very different collection again, etc. So have a look online so you get the feeling of that. And there's also very international in that we have, for example, Gardens Israel, where they record their data in multiple languages in both Hebrew and English, for example. So it's a big mix of different types of gardens.
If I can add, by online you mean at IrisBG.com?
Yeah. Oh yes, yes. Yeah. So, and some people ask, sort of, why do we end up doing this? So, our chief architect, he is a taxonomist and a software engineer. So we have background. My background is also professional software engineering, but we also have a lot of the skills needed to do exactly this in sort of the together. So and that's a challenge when you make any tool of any kind. You need to understand the problem you're trying to solve, and we do have a quite decent amount of knowledge in-house, but also we really work hard with the community to understand your problems and your needs, and that's how this product has been curated. So yeah, that's our background there. Bit about the whole sort of product as what it has inside it. So in traditional sense, this would be a sort of a typical setup in many gardens. You have one person, dedicated record keeper, and this person has its plants records, and that's it. And people have to go and ask this person, oh, how many aces do we have, or come with sheets, can you put this in, those kind of things. So with Iris, we look at it as a collection management system. So it does a bit more than just keeping your plant records. Hopefully after today you will have a bit of a feel of what that entails. But and what we think is really important is that the staff in general should be allowed to, and it should be made possible for the institution as a whole to use the data and also contribute in the data capture. If everybody writes on notes and hand over, and you lose, not only do you lose information, but you also, the efficiency is very questionable. So that's what we our sort of our or shall I say target is, to make it possible for you to decide how you organize your work, so that data capture is high quality at a low cost. This is something that people may not realize, so we have to mention that. So Iris is designed to be agnostic in terms of what type of plant material you're recording. So whether it's living or preserved material, DNA extracts, etc. So there are many ways to configure the system in terms of what type of material you are recording. And that we might not talk so much about that today, but keep that in mind. Yeah, let's leave it at that. Images, I put this up separately because it's becoming more and more important how you deal with images. Everybody has a smartphone and they take pictures all the time. So there are different ways to handle it, but on the sort of out of the box, we've tried to take away a lot of the complexity on how you deal with images. We're going to talk a bit about that as well. Mapping, or GIS. What we've tried to do here is to take away the complexity of GIS so that anybody can do it, and it's integrated so that you don't really need to install a lot of extra software to deal with GIS. But it's again, you can argue that it's a bit simplistic. So there are also ways of integrating Iris with ArcGIS. Brian has a presentation on Thursday, overlapping our presentation, but that's fine. So we will talk about that link on Thursday. So that is if you want to sort of do more advanced stuff with your maps. Data import, that's also, some gardens don't need it at all, but if you need it, you sort of become, I was going to say addicted, it's really super handy. It basically means you can prepare spreadsheets and load it into the system. There are many different ways that can help you, especially if you're larger institutions. If you go on a collection trip, for example, you can have it prepared, and if you get taxonomy from another institution, that kind of thing. And then the mobile solution, I'll talk a bit more about that, but that's of course, there are some obvious benefits of being able to do stuff out in the garden. And then there is the Garden Explorer website. So that's a web app that makes it possible for you to publish or share your plant collection with visitors or other gardens. Well, I'll talk a bit more about that later. And then we also have another web app for index seminum. Does anybody here have an index seminum or a sort of? Yeah. And the challenge with that is that you're just sort of doing it for free, and there's a lot of work and the payback. So keeping this efficient. This is like you can see the orders come online back into your. So there's a lot of time saved by using this type of approach. And of course, this is securely set up. So, for example, the Garden Explorer website has its separate database. There's no now. Of course, I don't know if you heard about these new laws about the GDPR privacy laws in Europe, for example. So all the data there doesn't contain any information that could be considered GDPR relevant, meaning. Yeah, so there's a lot of thought going into all of these things. So as far as we know, it's so in addition, there are also some extra tools that you can download. There's a plugin for Excel to help you to prepare data for data import. There's a couple of other things. There's a Word plugin to format your labels with italic and when you want Latin names or scientific names properly configured, etc. So I think it's probably the most comprehensive software solution now for botanic gardens. I haven't heard anybody say otherwise, but please come and talk to me if you haven't seen a system that has more stuff in it. But what's really nice, I think, is that if you don't need all these tools, you can sort of purchase the prices depending on what kind of features you need. And it's a bit also, it doesn't necessarily overwhelm you, even though those features are in there. If you don't need them, it doesn't necessarily need to feel like that has sort of made it more complex for you. Okay, just one word about usability. Our goal is that people who start using Iris should be productive from first day. That's basically, you might sort of get a sense of that after we've gone through this day or this workshop. So the basic stuff like recording an accession, that should be straightforward. And yeah, a bit of a video tutorial and you should be good to go. The other thing is that there are certain things that are advanced by nature. We can't, for example, when there are changes in nomenclature, it's sort of complex in its form. But it should be possible to do. So Iris has special things to help you to do those kind of semi-advanced things. And then on top of that, we have some tools that there are certain things we didn't think of at all that people are doing that are not necessarily tech-savvy people, but they're just very, shall I say, enthusiastic about plant records. So they want to do things that,
That includes me.
Exactly. A quick anecdote, for example, was one garden in South Africa who received some plant material from one garden, and they accessioned it. It was wild collected. They knew they had all this information about where it was collected. It was very, the detail they got was very sort of scanty. So they just they accessioned it, exported it out, sent a spreadsheet back to them and said, can you fill in the rest that you have? And they did it, and they got the sheet back again and imported it in again. So that's like, oh, I didn't think about that, but clever. So many possibilities. Okay, this is like the terms used in Iris, but it's also what shall I say, one-on-one basic sort of how data is put together in most sort of serious record keeping systems. So let's start up here first. Iris, there's a term in Iris, only when you see the screen, it's called collections. It should be more correct called collection site, not be confused with my sort of orchid collection or my maple collection. So collection sites. So Iris is designed to handle multiple sites in one system. So that is really handy if you have a bit like I mentioned with National Trust, for example, where they have, gardens or in several physical locations. They have their own accessioning, they have their own staff, and then it's separate, but a lot of data is shared between them, like the taxonomy and a number of other things. And of course, if you have 3 gardens as one institution, it's less expensive to have both for the running it, but also for purchase to have it all in one system. So that's if you need this, it's really, really helpful. And then each collection has then the accessions. I assume people know the term accession here. Yeah. And then the concessions may have localities, or one locality that is where it was collected in the wild. That's called localities in Iris. And then an accession can have what in Iris is called items, which is basically plants for most of you, but then it can also be a herbarium voucher or a DNA extract. So that's why it's called item, because it's very generic. I tried to come up with a better term, but it didn't manage. And each of these items are found one place in a garden or in a drawer or in a cupboard. So they need to be lined up so you can see that. So, but the significant part here is that one accession can have multiple plants, which is very important. And then here you see that Iris the accession has one taxa. And so I'll talk a bit about that, whether if it's name specific or taxa specific in terms of how you deal with the data. And each taxa has one accepted name and may have several synonyms. It doesn't have to. And this is significant in how you manage your data. I will talk a bit more about that, so that's clear how that's managed. Any questions about that? No? So, we got some explanations there. One thing to note about accessions is it's normally the normal approach is that it's material of the same genetic source. That's sort of the normal rule, but sometimes you make exceptions to that if you get a lot of annuals, or not necessarily annuals, but display plants, for example, you might just accession them even though they're not genetically the same, just for sort of efficiency. Okay, this is like what I mentioned, that Iris is taxon-centric. What does that mean? So if you have a spreadsheet and you have all your plant, there's nothing to be ashamed of, but if you have your plant records in Excel, are there anybody here who has that? Yeah? And of course it does work, but it becomes a bit tricky after a while if you get a few rows, more than 100, I don't know, when it sort of starts to creep. But the one problem is, of course, the names, in that you have to repeatedly type the name, but then if there's the one accepted name suddenly is no longer an accepted name, and you have a spreadsheet of 20,000 rows, you have a problem in that you need to find all these names in that spreadsheet. So with Iris, you're not referring your accession to a name, you're referring it to a taxon. So when you then work on the nomenclature, you don't need to do anything on the accessions. So this is the story about leopard lily. So these are just a few names that leopard lily has had over the years. And if you've used Iris since the beginning, you would have gone in there and made the changes and again and again. And I think the accepted name now is Iris Domestica. So are there anybody who object to that? Yeah, and that brings me on to another point, which often comes in the question. So we will force you to use Iris Domestica, No.
See that he can joke too.
No, that's my only joke tonight. I saw people were about to leave. No. So you are in charge of your own taxonomy. So if you want to stick to old school or whatever you want, you can do that. It's not a problem. Yeah. So we could have a separate workshop on just on that question. What is the right name?
The nomenclature meeting was earlier today, so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, you discussed this. So anyway, so this is important in that how Iris manage your names. Okay, so now we're going to just do some basic stuff. Logging in. This is going to be I'm going to be a bit quick because it's very basic. So what I've done here is that I've logged in. So this is the desktop product. Can people see this? Is it? We are recording this, just so you know. So we'll put this on YouTube. So if you want to revisit, assuming the recordings work well, then. So here on the left, you get all the. So I'm logged in as an administrator, so I can see quite a lot of options. But if you're sort of an horticulturalist or something with less access, you will only see those screens you can actually work with. So that becomes less daunting. And if I then click on the accession screen here, I get that coming up. I'm running on a local SQL like this, it's a bit slow, but so I can navigate through this way by clicking on the different parts of the screen. And what I can do here as well, I can do window and full screen. So I won't even see Facebook updates coming in. You can just focus on your plant records. Get in the zone. And it remembers where I've been, so you have this kind of navigational aspect here, so you can go back and back again. And up here you have the toolbar. If you that's it really. So the toolbar changes as I go back to the Taxa screen. You'll see that some more different options when I go back and forth. So most people understand this concept very quickly.
So one thing I find just real quick is when it's first installed, oftentimes the toolbar is what's called a small toolbar. It takes up less space. He's going to show you how to change the options for the.
You can go
because the bigger, the larger icons are much more friendly. It has text with them. So
the bigger one again, and then it becomes a bit more easy to understand what these buttons do. Okay. So. We'll just go straight in and do some searching, so you just get a feel for that. And Iris, this is when having a quick tutorial or a video becomes sensible, because how do you search here? So you just get this screen and what you do. And what you see here now, I think some of you, probably quite a lot of you, think this, oh wow, this is a bit crowded. Why is that? Well, we could use a bit of an analogy with sitting in a car for the first time. You suddenly need to figure out where's the indicator and where's the stereo thing, and some people just got to start driving and then see what happens. But the point here is that this is a tool for professionals, and there's a balance of being able to give you give an overview of the record straight away, so you don't have to flip around, click around, and move all over the place to figure out what you're looking at. So we're trying to sort of give you a very like a dashboard almost of the accession record, it becomes a bit clearer after we have looked at a few records. When it comes to searching, so Iris has two ways of searching. One is the really efficient way, which is basically using the screen as a search thing. So to get started, you just clear the screen if you have anything here, and then you can go into a lot of these fields and just type in something. So if I type in rod here for rhododendron and click on the search up here, I get a list. In this case, 19. So you get a lot of information on the screen here, like there's 19 accessions 8 different countries of origin, 6 different species. You can click on the tools to sort it, all those kind of things. So it's sort of, you can print it, export it to spreadsheet, do all kinds of things. And then you can scroll down here, and if you want to look at this lovely tomatosum, you just either double click on it or use the space bar. And then I have these 19, and it says down here now I got a list of 19 and I'm working on number 10. And then, so logically, if you want to work on a set of records, let's say you want to work on all your acers or something, you search them up, you got 29 of them, and then you can go through that list looking at the first one, looking at the next one, looking at the next one. And then you can jump back to the list and sort it again. So it's very sort of, very efficient kind of workflow. And then you see, if I go a bit further down here, I'm just going to see if I get, so you see down up here, you see that there are 5 tabs. These are the details. You can see here the determination or the identification, when that happened, locality where it was collected in the wild, origin, and material. So these sections can be collapsed, and this one has a yellow light to tell you there's some more detail behind it. So a lot of that kind of small details that you get used to quite quickly. And then here it says 2, meaning there are 2 items, and there are also 2 images. So I can then go here, click here. So here we have 1 plant and 1 herbarium voucher. And if I expand this, I can then also see the history of the plant records, of the planting. And if I click on this one, for example, what was recorded in 98, I get the details here of that entry. So you see there's quite a lot of information, very easily sort of look at. You can just click a click and then you get all the different things coming up. Parentage, images, I've got 2 photos here. And then you see here some details about ranking, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. And then references. And if I want to do some more advanced search, I can combine it, of course. I can do put in rhododendron, and I can go down to provenance and see it gives me all my wild collected rhododendrons. That's very easy. And then I got 12 instead. So I think most people will grasp this approach. And then,
actually,
of course,
actually one more that's really quick. Can you clear it again? And just type in rod T.
yeah.
T.
Thank you.
So just like parts of the words you can search for.
So rod T, meaning anything starting with a rod in genus and species name starting with T.
Or in this case has a T in it.
Yeah, in T in it, yeah.
Right. But if you were to put, TOM or something, it would filter out even more. So.
And next, or hopefully one day when you type into find things that did you mean?
It's like autocorrect, yeah.
I'm going to use the paperclip symbol from the old Microsoft
Exactly.
Word. We love that.
It's like,
Point, I can help.
Yeah,
Coming in from the left.
Do you need help?
I mean, it looks like you're trying to kill a plant.
I help you, yeah, exactly.
I don't need help.
Okay, so that's the basic search, which has a lot of that, as Gregg pointed out, a bit of hidden sort of nuggets.
Minutia in there, yeah.
But you can see there's some limitations there. Let's say I wanted to see all the wild collected rhododendrons between 1950 and 1970 or something, and then that's when advanced search comes to aid. So when I clear the screen, I will see that button up there, advanced search, comes available, and then you get this thing, which is first time you see this, you think, oh, this is well, that's quite a lot to relate to, but it is really very powerful. So if you want to search about taxon information, you expand that section. If you want to search on image information, let's say you want all the wild collected rhododendrons that came within a certain range that has a picture.
Or doesn't have one.
Or doesn't,
So
or whatever,
yeah.
There are many. So then I can go to accession here and say accession year. Instead of equal, I can do between, and then we can do between 1980 and 2010. And then we go there. And then I go to provenance, say we want wild collected. And then we go further down, and we want taxon. So some of these things Taxol begins with, and you now see that you're basically doing very advanced things. And most people get this straight away. I suppose, are there anybody who find this difficult? Yeah? The leading question, though, I realize that a bit. Yeah, sorry.
So I could see if you're not a regular user, is there some kind of quick reference about what exactly these different fields mean? Like it says no or that graph.
Yeah.
I mean, some description that explains in more detail what those are.
There are, I agree with you that certain fields are a bit cryptic, and normally it's not a big issue because people know there's no quick reference from this particular part of it.
I mean, after the first day, you have it pretty much. If it's fields that you use commonly, you'll know.
Right, but if we have like a staff person who's going to work on this once a month.
Yeah. Well, then typically you wouldn't go in here to try to really search on that kind of really specific obscure fields that are a bit difficult to understand. So it's normally not a problem, but I suppose that's something we could improve on in terms of
certain fields. You know, if it goes back to the main screen,
I'm going to finish this example first, maybe. So
show the
so we'll go back on images and do has images equals yes, which is slightly maybe a bit too cryptic, or the logic there is a bit sort of data-ish. Okay, so now we got all the rhododendrons that are well collected within a certain time frame that has photos, and then I got one. So it just comes up. That was not a very good example. So I can clear, and I can go back again and change it to all the ones that doesn't have photos, because we of course want to make sure all our well collected have pictures. And then we got quite a few. So we can use that as our example later. Thank you. Remember that? I will. Okay. Great. So the good news with this advanced search that you saw now, it's used in Taxa screen as well, and it's also used when you run reports. So all the reports are based on that same principle, and in the reports you can also save those advanced filter combinations you've made. So it sort of makes it possible to really, work on your data and analyze it. Okay. You had some point.
Oh, I was going to make, some of these fields will have a tooltip that pops up. Not all of them do, but if you hover over the field, usually on the items tab,
Yeah, I can
more on there. Some of these, like that. So some of the more cryptic ones that you might not understand half of them, but some are more like a location name is the name of its location. It's pretty quick.
Right. Can we add more information to that tooltip?
Not at the moment.
The end user doesn't have that option, but you can take notes.
Yeah, so it was.
You stick a post-it on the screen.
Yeah, no, but it's a good. I mean, we see those kind of questions coming up. When especially when I think the thing what we try to avoid is certain things become like not necessarily what the field is, but how one garden would want to use it, and another garden may want to use it slightly differently. Then it becomes very difficult to integrate that as part of the software. So looking into ways of being able to manage your record keeping policy, and that's something I hope we can come with later.
Yeah, there are things that I've done that weren't intended to be done with the system, but it works for me. So that's how I do it. So it's up to you. It's what data you want, what field.
So, because it's introduction, I'm just going to quickly show you a few sort of basic principles on how Iris is set up in terms of how you use it, how you update data. So, when you navigate through the system, there are three types of screens you will see. There's the one we've seen now, that's the accession screen. And then there's a list, and then there's a shared list and screen. We'll do that very quickly, but the one example, which also illustrates a bit about how Iris can be used very efficiently in terms of how you deal with tracking the lifespan of your plants is these plant status. So I'm going to go in there. So when you navigate through the system, you probably saw drop-downs here and there, drop-downs where you select from a list. Most of these lists you manage yourself, so you can tweak this to your heart's content. And all this stuff is managed down here under definitions. Here you have a number of these drop-downs that you can then tweak. And typically you do that because management or somebody wants to know how many plants were, for example, died due to natural causes. If you don't record that, you can't give the answer either. So these are the kind of decisions you make when you use the system. And let's do that. We can go into item status here. And what is really handy here is plant status. You see here in this particular instance we have like 15 or 12, I don't know. Yeah, 17. Thank you. And each of these statuses that I've added are, you tell the system whether it signifies that the plant is dead, or if it's alive, or if you don't know, or also something called procedure, meaning it's in a transition, typically being propagated. So you don't count it as part of the collection yet, but it's a candidate, let's call it that. So it's being processed or a procedure. So, and if I click on this one, the sort column here, I get it in the list that users will find this when they click on the drop down. So you can also decide the most important or most often used statuses will come first, etc. And here, let's say I wanted to make it possible to record dead horticultural calls. Then it's very simple. You just go up here on the green thing here, add new item, and then I just say px n. So these codes here is also something you manage. You can change them. It's not like when you set. So this is more that are certain reports when you want to. It's handy to have these codes coming up because it makes it quicker to read if you're a bit sort of expert. And also for data import, because somebody might start changing, given away to somebody or something. So that using the codes are a bit more stable in that respect. So if I say dead, natural cause, so that will be not existing, and then I'll just put it at the same level as this one. So so that's sort order 7, and then of course I want to do dead horticultural cause as well. So now if I go in here and say, some of you may then think, that's clever, now we've done. But what's happening here is, of course, that all those records you had already suddenly are changed from dead to dead horticultural cause. So management will go crazy. Oh, you killed all our, all the annual report will say, So what you probably should do here is to, sort of maybe something like unknown cause, just to make it clear in this case. So that the head gardener doesn't get fired, or PX H, and then you get natural cause like this. Oops. I seem to be I have keyboard dyslexic. Not existing, and 7. Okay. And that's it. Now, very simple. What the system also stops you from doing is to, I don't need these, and delete them, and then of course you lose all your statistics on all those hundreds or thousands of records that were recorded as dead or something. So it's there are a lot of mechanisms put in here to avoid you to stop incorrect data entry, but also to prevent you from ruining everything. Let's put it that way. So yeah.
Robert?
Yep.
Did you say you can restrict permissions on who can change it?
Absolutely, yes. I didn't mention that, but obviously the permissions here are managed by yourself, and it's on screen level, so you can say one person can look at this, but cannot make changes. Another person can make all the changes, etc. So it's reasonably what should I say, fragmented, and yeah, that's.
And as he said, he can hide certain pages from certain users so that they can't edit the list of countries that the plant can be collected in, the journals, the types of labels that are made, or things like that. So
Yep.
that can all be controlled by the login permissions.
But and also this approach here with coming up with a list and then a plus up here and a minus to delete, that's sort of throughout the system. So now you understand this, and you see another screen that looks similar. The same approach is used. So yeah. And then there are some data list screens as well. So these are slightly different. That's when you have a bit more a richer data set. One example is the contact list, which is found under management contacts. So these are typically the suppliers, could be donors because you can record memorial trees there, those kind of things. So if I search here, you see we got a list here of all the contacts here, and then I click on one of them and I get the details on the right. So it's a slightly different layout, but the principle is similar. I find the record, click on it, make changes, and then save. And this this is a trial database. So if and one thing that's quite nice is here we can actually see that we have two duplicates. Chan City and Chan Botanis looks very similar, and we may have a couple of accessions recording on that one and a few on that one, and that's a bit of a nightmare to deal with, can be. But what's nice with Iris is that it will, back to that, sort of stop you from doing silly things. If I just take this one and think, oh, I don't need both of these, so I'm going to just delete it, and then it will say this is in use. So what are you going to do with all that data? Would you want to stop and look at this, or so we can just transfer all the data to the other Qian like that. And click OK, and now we're done. Yeah.
Mark, the codes, do you have to make them up, or do they come up on their own?
Yeah, exactly those codes there. Yeah. So those codes, if you don't do anything, we'll just give it a number.
Okay.
And yeah, we did have I think there was on our forum, there's a sort of what shall I say, a suggested approach to designing those codes so that it makes sense to you. It becomes a bit of a struggle when you have lots of contacts to figure out a method. But I think I can't remember, it was the 3 first letters of each part of the name or something, and make it a 9-coded thing. Because when you then type, you find it straight away.
Okay.
So that was one suggestion, but yeah.
I was going to say, I don't quite use that. I just use if it's DAWs Arboretum, I would have DAWs, Holden Arboretum, Holden, just the word that you think of when you say it to yourself. So if you're in the accession screen and you're putting in the source, I can type in MSU, and it just pops up with the Michigan State University.
And well, just the horticulture gardens, field garden.
Well, then I would have Deal or Hidden Lake or whatever. Yeah.
You get the list at that point, probably, right?
Pardon?
If you type to MSU, you probably get the list. At that
No,
point.
it only shows you one at a time, but you have the code set. If you know it's Hidden Lakes, you just type in HI, and it's there in the shortcut. So, but you can bring up a list and do a search here for all the ones in Sweden or all the ones in Michigan, and it gives you all the gardens.
Okay.
So you can do that as well. It's just
Okay.
one more step to go into the box and search for that feature that they all share.
So you have a spot for value or purchase price if you got something out, so you could say this is valued at this much.
Yeah, on the accession, you mean? Yeah, we can look at that. Yeah, that would be when we talk about the accession part. Yeah. So now we're in the contact thing. So, but yes, you can add your own fields as well to certain things. We'll have a quick look at that. Okay.
She has one more question.
Oh, sorry.
Question. So when your data gets put into IrisBG,
Yep.
will would just bring up names, and then you would create those from, like, the codes from everything that gets in there, that gets put in there, and you can see the duplicates then, as far as contacts.
Yeah, you mean if we transfer the data for you?
Yes.
Yeah, it will be, if we see obvious duplicates, we might help you, we might sort of merge them for you. But in general, yeah, that's how you will be able to do it here, by just bringing it up here and then sorting it by name and stuff, and then you can then merge them yourself, yeah.
And then you can add your
Well, if
codes
she-
then.
Yeah, and add your codes, yeah.
She's talking the code too.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
If
yeah.
it comes, it would just be numbered in order of the first one was
Yeah.
number 1 all the way through to the end. In this case, like in 237 wouldn't be the last. So you have to go in and add your own code manually.
Yeah.
I apologize for being late, but seeing what you just did in terms of duplicate key sources, or what you would call your
Yep.
codes, your external context. If you are having a taxonomic name change because of APG or something like that, can you do a similar thing and change all accession records and accession
Yep.
files?
Yes.
We'll squeeze in an example of that.
Okay.
Yep.
That's more advanced, but yeah, you can touch on it. But yeah,
Yep.
that's easy.
Yeah, well, all the name changes going on, it's painful,
Yeah.
but have to go through and change it individually.
Yep. I remember showing that the first time to somebody who, yeah, no, we'll do it afterwards, yeah. Okay. And then, of course, the first screen you saw was the accession screen, where you have the data and then you have the list as a separate kind of thing. We've switched forth and back. Yeah. So that was this 3 types. Going back to the accession screen as an example again, so we remember, if I now search for my rhododendrons again, I get that list of rhododendrons, and then I can open it up, and then I see there's 19 down there, and I can sort of flip between the list. And so that's sort of the 3 approaches on how the data or how the system is designed in terms of user interface. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to just show you how to make changes to a record. We've already made changes to a few records already, even we haven't made much fuss about it, but we have. And so we're just going to take one example here. We're going to update this accession. It's a trillion. We're going to change the contact, and then change some plant status, and then add a second plant. So the nice thing here is that Iris is sort of, I can do, if I want accession number 2011-4, I can just type it like this, 11-4, and it, because, and that's something people ask about, how this accession number format here is, as you see, it's a year, 4-digit year, a hyphen, and the system can be configured in many kind of variations. But we recommend, even if you are used to an 8-numbered system, it is easier to read when there's a separator.
What happens if you have a 1911 000?
Yeah, but the system, when you search, it will assume it's the current year. So if you type 11.4 and you want 1911.4,
so that's the default.
Yeah, it will, when it's doing sort of predictive search, it will assume that it's this.
We have over 100 years worth of records.
Absolutely, yeah, we have gardens with several hundred years.
It's easy enough to type 1911
Yeah.
or 2011
Right.
in that case.
Well, I was just
that
wondering,
it's
if just kind of freak the computer out, that's all.
Yeah.
No, that's no.
Well, that would be good.
They're good.
So what we were going to do here is to change the contact. So it's currently recorded with Hortus Botanicus in Amsterdam, and we're going to just change it to Smithsonian Garden. Somebody made a mistake. So I open it up, and I'm just going straight in here, go into contact, start typing Smithsonian, and it doesn't appear that Smithsonian is coming up, which is, so it will use the codes when I type. And what's really nice here is that you have the drop down, but you also have a little button on the side with the 3 dots. And what that gives you is the possibility to jump into the records behind this drop down. That's the contact screen that you've already seen. So I can now try to find Smithsonian a bit more sophisticated. I can look here at the Smith and then search for it instead properly, and it's not here. So I just need to add it. So I'm just going to say, okay, I've already cleared it, so I can just say Smithsonian Gardens, and then give it a cool code. That will be SI. and then save it. And you see, it doesn't ask you to do a lot if you don't need to. Maybe I don't want to. So I just do select and close, and then I'm back where I was. And this same thing goes when you record new accessions. So you don't find the contact, you just click on the ellipsis, you go in, you just do it, bang, and back in.
Or I find I have a some invoice from some garden that was already on my list, and I see it looks like a different address than what they have. I can just go in and update the address, and put in notes about was formerly this address, something like that. Just add that information right on the fly as I'm going.
So that was the one thing we were going to do, and we were going to add another plant to this. You see there's one plant here. It has a plant that is in the seed store. So that's a good example in that, should we go a bit off track and say that they've now propagated this, that's why you're going to add a few more plants. Well, anyway, so I'm just going to add a new plant, and we say location here, and then here we can then, when it comes to the locations, you can manage this yourself, obviously, and you can create a structure, hierarchical, as deep as you like. And then you see here there are some codes to give you some sort of, they're obviously specific to each garden again as well. But let's say we put this in the Magnolia Grove at the Arboretum. And then we say planted. So now we see these statuses we had. They would normally, I changed the screen resolution here, so normally you would see the red and green symbols here. It's just because I tweaked the screen, so that sometimes doesn't work as it should, but no, not going to try. Planted, and then date. So here I can say, oh yeah, it was in 2018, and just say it's the year. Or I could do, let's say it's in April, like that. And you see, oh, this is scary dates. These are European dates. That's because I'm running a European setup. So if you risk and hire a European, he can have European dates on his computer, and you don't need to know about it. So
I mean, each installation can be set up with its own display.
Yep.
So the European puts in that date, and on your screen it's the American date.
Yep. The number of specimens, and this is often a question. So this will get its own qualifier, and let's say there were 3 plants put in the same spot. Do I put 3 here, or do I put 3 qualifiers? That's basically a sort of a question. This is a sort of a not very long-lived specimen, so. And if they're going to stay in the same spot, you might as well have 1 qualifier. It's all about how the value of the plants and how you foresee. If you want to track the lifespan of the individuals anyway, then you split it up. You're not going to spend much time on discussing that. But if I save time, save the record. I mean, I'm done, almost. The one thing that's also quite cool here now is that we put it in the Magnolia Grove. And then the mapping question comes up. Do you want to, now you want to push this online to visitors, and they want to search for all your trilliums, and of course they want to find them. The nice thing here is that when I click on this symbol here, I can see the map here. Now we're getting, it's a bit difficult for me to see some of you, but this is a Google satellite map. This is Oslo University Botanic Garden. That's the sample data set. So this point here, this red point, that's the center point of the Magnolia Grove. So when you set it up, the system, you put all your locations in, and then you give the center points for all your areas. And then you sort of mapped your whole plant collection, in a way. In a sort of cheap and quick and ready, I can go home kind of way. And then you can search and find all your quercus. Where are they? Oh, they're there. So it's already there, and then what's really nice is that you can also decide where you put your efforts in terms of mapping. So maybe annuals, they're already mapped. You don't need to bother to put exactly where they are. But the nice thing also, if you want to give it the exact coordinates, there are many approaches. You can, Gregg, they have a sort of high precision GPS. Obviously, you can invest that time if you put in an oak tree, because it's going to stay there for a long time, hopefully. And But the alternative approach is also you can just bring up the map, zoom in, and then here you've got a Google went over yesterday. We were really lucky, so we can see the trillium here. Maybe not, but you can. That's next year coming with Google.
That's a big trillion.
It's not called Google Satellite, it's called Google Drones. So you have weekly updates. Yeah, sorry.
So Howard, if you happen to have a plant that you've actually precisely located,
Yep.
say with the GPS near about that center point of that grid or that bed, is there something to tell you that one was a general location indicator and one was a precise location indicator?
Yeah. So when you bring up the maps, those two things are different map markers on the maps all the time.
Okay.
So, and that's where the kind of question about ArcGIS or other mapping systems in Iris, we just basically show those two. And then if you want to have more advanced iconography on your maps, then you could do something like exporting it out to ArcGIS. And but the distinction between area and plant is very clear, always. And now you see here the coordinates as well come up, so it has a visual aid. And then I go back, and then I'm done. So now I've added a plant quite quickly. And while I'm here, I might as well say, okay, we planted it in April, but we decided to move it because that didn't look really nice. So today we moved it. What I do then is I can just go here and say, okay, we moved it. So this is significant how Iris works. When you want to make changes to a record, you just do that, and then you will see something very handy. I'm just going to put in today's date. We moved all three of them to another part of the garden. We moved it to the lilac field. And then we are going to just drag the marker to the lilac field. I'm not sure where that is, but I'm just going to do it here. And then I'm going to save that. And then you'll see that there's a plus sign here. So it just created a history for you. So it has this snapshot from when you first started, and then this is the current situation. This is really handy, obviously. You don't need to think about it, it just happens. But some people, just a little bit of a warning, if you use other systems, you might feel inclined to sort of think, oh, I need to add history now, because I'm changing things. But you don't. You just change the existing record, and then click save, and then it just...
And to just add a small amount of other confusion, but hopefully you can clarify something. If all of this 0.1 item had sprouted, and you had 3 plants, and there were no more seeds, you could just change this in Seed Store to planted or inventoried in the nursery. All these codes you can edit yourself and you make your own terminology for. But you could edit this one so the 3 plants were planted in some location, and then you would still have just the first row with 0.1.
Would it then create the automatic record that it was formerly, they were all in the seed store?
Yeah, it will have that history. Yeah.
That's what I should have done, maybe. But there's another scenario also when you start with 50 seeds and you propagate them and you're left with 20 plants, and then you have one qualifier, and then that's another discussion that's a bit more advanced when you want to track the life cycle from propagation all the way to the plants out in the garden. But then suddenly you sprout out and may have 20 qualifiers if need be. So it's a bit more, yeah.
So can you look at the previous record, like you see on the right-hand side, for what the previous information, the geographic location was? Geographic location.
Yeah. So now I clicked. If I now click on the bottom one here, the details are here on the right.
Can you map?
That is the previous location.
Yeah, this was the previous
The
location.
Python name.
If you watch this field right here, I'll scoot back. As you click between history and current, you'll see these change.
Yes.
Can you map the previous location?
Yeah, if you click on this one, now click this map button here.
Okay.
And it
That
shows you
the
where it
previous
was.
location. Okay.
So there'll be a
So
way
the
to
location.
show.
Yeah.
There'll be a way to show both dots at the same time.
At the same time, yes. Well, how is that? There is a way. So that's a different. But you can produce maps,
Alright.
where you look at historic data. So you can say, give me all the, for example, you can look at all the acers over a 30-year span, even though half of them are dead a long time ago. So you can create historic maps that way. But I'm not sure we put several markers of the same plant. I don't think so, no.
For example, I just generated maps showing locations of trees for the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, you could do that. That's easy. Yeah, but not if it's the same accession or plant. The tree has moved several times. We don't come up with 4 markers, I think. But that's a question we might discuss and figure out later. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah, because our trees aren't quick to connect.
Yeah. Because we'd like to know where that one tree was.
Yeah.
Construction. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. We move trees 3, 4, 5 times on campus. Looks big.
So then, Havar, you couldn't export the history back to ArcGIS because it has the same index number, right?
You can export most data. I'm not sure about that particular. To ArcGIS?
Yeah,
No,
because
it's
you're
not.
talking about using the same accession number with 3 different locations,
Yeah.
for example. And the accession number being the unique part of the data that
Yeah.
you're
I
relying
mean,
on indexing in ArcGIS, you would have to somehow qualify those, wouldn't you? in order
yeah,
to
I mean, the
export?
normal use for ArcGIS,
Okay.
the sync that we're developing with Esri is to work on the current data set. It's not for analyzing old
the
historic data and that kind of thing. That might be something we do in the next
Yeah,
iteration.
because that one record would have the same GID,
Right.
but what location? It can only have one location at one time. At one
For sure,
moment.
yeah, one location at the same
Right.
one time, yeah.
But there's
So
also the
I don't
option.
know how they would do that.
Yeah.
There's also the option to do a report where you save the results as a KML file. And you could open that up in Earth or
Right.
import it into
Then
ArcGIS that way. So you could have your current locations and then bring in a second layer of
Right.
old locations
So-
via a KML file. if you
But
wanted
like
to do
in
that.
my example, I bring it in 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, if you had different, like, from this date
5
to
or
this date,
6
do this
years.
KML file, from this date to this date, do this
Right.
KML file.
I
You
think
could
we're
have-
Exactly.
Diving into,
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
sort of fast tracking into advanced topics for
Yeah.
next workshop.
Yeah.
Sort of, that's like straight away. Exporting historic data where the tree has moved 29 times over the years. Now, let's go back to where we were.
Diving into a war in here.
Okay. Most things are possible, but not absolutely everything. Okay, so we've now changed it to one accession. We moved it around a bit. We, did a few things. Now we're just going to record a new one. So it's going to be an aconitum compactum from Chelsea Physics Garden with 3 plants and then 2 plants in the nursery and 1 in rock garden, and then we're going to map it and then, So this is basically to show you how easy it is to add new accessions. You clear the screen again, as we did with it before search and before other things, and then we can just start recording. So this can confuse you a bit in the beginning, but these fields up here are just summary of the accession. They're not for data entry.
Or for a quick search, the top
Yeah.
2, the accession number and the taxon, you can just type in those and search instead of picking the name down here when you have to find the whole name. Up here, you can just type in that rod, TOM,
Yeah.
and you can start with all the accessions in 2017 up there, and it'll bring those up. But
So what you typically do is you just go straight into the taxon name and start typing. If you want to record historic data, you might want to put in the accession year. But here we want an aconitum, so I can start typing. And here we see now, we get an alphabetic list of the names in your taxonomy, and it will show you all the accepted names and synonyms alphabetically. And if we go a bit further in now, I start aconitum, and then I can to space and start typing compactum, and then you see we're sort of getting closer and closer and closer. And here you see that also aconitum compactum is actually a synonym of Nepellus. So somebody sent us this, or somebody ordered it or whatever, and the person in charge of the taxonomy here said it's called Napellus. But what's nice here is that if I select this now, you will see that Iris will say, okay, this is the accepted name, but it was determined, identified, or in this case, received as a compacted.
This nomenclature is already in it?
No, not really. So this is just a sample database.
Okay.
And when we transfer data, we will transfer your taxonomy, and then we will also do a bit of data cleaning. There's on our website there's a page about what we can do. We will check the genera, for example, and then give you a list of things that spelling mistakes and things we found. Yeah, and we'll upgrade it to APG3. So all the higher ranks are APG3 genus and above. Yeah, so according to Napellus or compactum, we're going to say it was from Chelsea Physic Garden, and I go to contacts here, and I actually know it's called London 1. I don't know why, but there it is. It's like Gregg, somebody says London. That's what I think about when I say Chelsea Physic Garden. It's a very beautiful garden. You should go visit if you haven't. They use iris. It's the oldest garden in. No, I don't know if it's the oldest in the UK, but it's one of the oldest in the world anyway. Provenance, garden. And again, I don't need to do more. I can go in here in material, for example, and say that we received, it was received as a living specimen. We got 3. You know, this is all about, not about record keeping. What you fill in here is very much about your sort of record keeping policy. If this is sort of important material, you spend a bit of effort. If you want to run reports on this later, or if you see that this information is needed in the future, you record it. Yeah, but that's another discussion. But you can see here, there's a lot of details that can be filled in if needed.
Or not.
Or not, yeah. And then, I'm not sure I'm going to record more. No, I'm not. And then we're just going to go to the plant on the item side. And again, planting. Did I say where it was? Rock garden bed 55. And the rock garden, so that was called R. 55, and then planted today, or let's say April again, 18, 1 specimen, and we put 2 in the nursery. So I'm just going to nursery. No, that was a nursery 1, isn't it? Oops. No, it's just nurseries. Nurseries. Sorry. That's the one. Here we don't have received. I'm just going to go planted just for the sake of brevity here. But you get the point. So I could put 2, I could split them all up now because we know we're going to move 1. Maybe this is probably where it might make sense to split it up and say we have 2 in the nursery, but then separate ones, because we're sure that we're going to plant them in different places in the near future. So we're sort of giving it its life, sort of list tracking from the first point. And save it, and there we go. So you see now, if I click on that, by the way, here you see the qualifier and the accession number together. So this is typically what you put on the plant label, and you put it used for barcodes, etc. And again, here we see numeric qualifiers, but the system can be also set up with alphabetic qualifiers if you prefer that. And we're going to map it as well, just quickly. So here's the rock garden. And now you see that I'm using Google Satellite. I can switch to something else. So Iris can hook on to several standard map providers like Google and Bing. It can also consume maps that are on a WMS service. And I think there should be, here's one ArcGIS map. If I have Wi-Fi, I do. So it's a bit, so you see now this is first time it's pulling this map, so it's a bit, but it will keep a sort of cache of these tiles, so it's quicker next time. And this is not a great map, but it's still, but you see the how it works. That's the most important part of that. So here we go. It's a bit clunky with the, yeah. So, and then I'm happy with that. Select to close and save. So now I've finished. A new accession is born. Number 2.
Question. If you had 10 plants and you're going to plant it in the same location and it's got all the same information that would be in the first record, can you copy that and duplicate it 9 more times?
That's one thing that we have on our sort of requests, you could say, yeah.
So you don't have to hand type it in 9 more times?
Yeah,
You know?
but it goes quite quickly, but yeah.
All depends how much data you have.
Yeah. But yes,
And
that's...
I mean, it's possible to speed it up too. Like you could add 9 more blanks here and then just hit P for planted, enter down P, enter down P, enter down, and then copy down locations and things like that. And then take your map locations and copy all those down, copy all of these down for each row, and then save it. And it's just the copy down thing would be nice. So that's something I'm looking for.
You have 50 plants, it gets built on there.
Yeah.
Or then you can just have one record as a mass.
We can't do that.
that.
That's our own personal problem.
We can't do that.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
They're different parts.
Because of maintenance, removals,
Yeah, they have
which
to
one
have
did you
exact
remove?
Well, that's your policy then, so.
That's our compromise with our grounds department.
Yeah.
But what you can do here is that, let's say you got 3 plants from Chelsea. You got the Napellus and you got something else. Then you have this at least as a repeat button.
Yeah.
So you just
Okay.
create a copy of the accession, and then you can then say it wasn't this was something else. This was Aconitum lycococtum, and the rest is the same. Typically nice when it's wild collected or something like that. And then
Still have its locality set.
and we also copied the items here. So let's say we just had 2 in the nursery and that was it. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, and then delete this one because we didn't. And now we've done that. Accession number 2 from Chelsea. So there's a few of
your
those.
list on your on the invoice, you fill out all the details for where it came from and when and all that stuff. For the first one, then you just copy and then change names and quantities and item information, and it's much faster that way.
But this particular case where you had 100 plants that all want a qualifier, then actually the data import might be your solution just now with the current product. You can just prepare a spreadsheet with, and just copy up and then import all the, so you can maybe accession the main part and then import the plants as a spreadsheet.
It's like an Excel, and then
Yep.
you pull that in instead.
Yep.
So if I have 100 taxes that came in specific day, they're gonna go all over the place, but usually they go to the nursery first, and then
Yep.
it gets put out on campus in different locations, so I could just make an Excel sheet with
Yep.
It's in the
100,
nursery. I
yank
don't
it
bother
in.
putting in map locations because it's
No,
just
because they
nursery.
wouldn't, I would
Yeah,
do that,
right.
yeah. But they're gonna
Records
say
plan.
it's, but it could be, but usually they'll come in and they'll go to our nursery. They sit at the nursery until they go out for the projects. Yeah.
But you could enter the accession with 1 row and then export that record into Excel
Mhm.
and then copy that row down
50
100 times.
Or 100 times, yeah.
And then import that
And
back
then pull it
in.
back in.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So there are ways around that as well, but we understand that it would be cool to just There should be a sort of live video feed from Gregg's office, I think, so we can get
See what Greg's doing today. It's like a get off Facebook.
live Facebook Live, yeah. Okay, so now we all know how to record accessions. I mean, we didn't go very advanced things, but anyway, we might pop into a bit more richer data set quickly. But first we're going to just do a bit of reports, because that's when you put in data, you want to pull it out again. So we're just going to do a few reports so you get a feeling. We have, going back here, so the reports are here under the very easy to understand section called reports. You click here, and then what you see here then is sort of options based on what kind of data you want to report. Do you want to have a report on accessions, or do you want plants coming out to your report, or do you want taxa, or whatever. So if I want to run a report on my accessions, I can go here, and maybe I want to run my accession catalog as an example. And I'm just, for brevity, I'm going to do the rhododendron again, just to make this short report. What do you want to
And
say?
it must be spelled with a U. That's a no.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So, good point.
So actually, you can edit that too.
So all these reports, the system comes with I don't know how many reports, but 30, no, 50 maybe, roughly, something like that. And then you can tweak these. You can spin off and create new variations on these as well. And the reports are, most of the reports will produce spreadsheets. But some reports can also, you can also create reports that use Word templates. So they basically do mail merge. So you can design reports that look a bit nice. And then there are some other variations on this as well. But if I run this one now, I'm doing all my rhododendrons again. I know you've seen that before. And I just click View, and then I get a Word document somewhere. Here we go. So, yeah, this is the standard thing that comes with. But then you can tweak this and put your logo up here and do other things. And, yeah.
And you know, take off this U right there. Or the UD anyway.
Yeah. Or if you're in Sweden, you change it to something else.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was one report, and then if I want to run plants instead, here we see there's several. There's one that just take raw data, one called item history, so you can export historic data, etc., etc. So I'm just going to do that one, and then say I know this is really tedious. I do the rhododendrons. No, I do accession. No, I just know that there's a, and then click View, and here this one will come up with a spreadsheet. And then of course you think, oh, I don't need those columns. Then you can go and tweak that, and get a new variation.
If you like your tab across there's a lot of information in these fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can add more than that even.
Yeah.
It's a subset.
So that's reports. Maps. Now I'm tempting to, let's do just, so either you can, the maps are of wild collected areas. The global maps are basically where you have collected materials. You want to show a map of, if you have a lot of wild collected material, you want to see where did we collect all our rhododendrons or whatever. Rhododendrons again. Anyway, and items map are basically maps of your own plants. Where are they? So let's do one of those. Am I going to do that again?
Oh yeah, quick. Sure.
No, this is. I'm just going to rhododendron because I know that I get. So here we go. I know because I changed the screen resolution that everything is a bit sort of small here. It will be bigger. So the yellow markers, if you can see those, are the plants themselves, and the red ones are the areas. So there are some plants in this selection that just has an area, and then I can do here. I can give show the names as labels. Zoom in a bit more, and then there's another cool feature: reposition labels, so they don't overlap. So a lot of cool little things. And another one that's also nice is to go here and just say a number. And sometimes maps are so packed with plants that you can't have anything. And then you have this one, save map and data. It will save an image of this one, so you can send it to someone, and a spreadsheet with the numbers and the full details of the. Yeah.
This is just reporting on the live plants that are in the ground.
Yeah, at this point. The historic one. I'm going to do a historic one because this is quite a cool example. Just I'm doing a history map, but I'm going to do with the Usability because it's because Gregg is here. So I'm going to bring up another data set. So if I do, because that also gives you a feeling about better maps. So if I go maps here now and do I'm doing item history map, and I'm going to do status everything from 1980 to 2010, and then I'm going to do Taxol, and I'm going to do all the acers, and that's it. So I'm getting anything that was alive at some point in that period.
It's a big list.
Is it? Yeah, it is, I suppose. So the markers are a bit, because of the screen thing here, it's a bit small, but you see so we got 1,527 trees.
And this is actually my GIS that I
Yeah.
built too. So.
But here you see also these now we're feeding from a WMS service with and you see the map here is a bit better quality than the other one we saw earlier.
And these lines are squiggly because there's actually underground pins here that are mapped. So when these were installed, starting back in the 30s, they weren't necessarily lined up perfectly. So we just sort of make lines up out of these boxes and then grouped them accordingly.
Yeah, it's a bit crowded with that. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's really nice here, just as a map kind of scenario, is also when I have all these trees now, and I think, let's say they want to plant more aces, but they want to avoid an area. So now we see, are there any areas we haven't had acer before? And the answer is yes. Of course, we can see up in this section. Hold on, I'm just going to use. Sorry, I'm just clicking away a bit. Going a bit. So up here there hasn't been any, but that's probably out of the garden. But in this section we don't have anything. And then we can then go over to a soil type map. So we can see what kind of soil type we have in this area as well. So we can then use this as a tool to decide where we're going to introduce more acers. So I don't know what kind of soil type this is, but
This is the Amanda silt loam right here.
okay.
It's good soil.
We don't know which of these are dead and which of these are still alive.
No, some of them are dead, some of them are live. Yeah. If we click on them, you can get that
Is
information.
that soil map something you get from somewhere else?
Yeah, that's something we don't help you with. But
Yeah, that's something we. I
wish
built the
we
file.
could.
Actually, our previous full-time GIS person who left about 8 years ago built that. But the data was available from the state, and just built the.
You just put it in there.
Yeah, just built it.
Sometimes when I go to the map, not all the times when I go to the map, it comes up with some weird, like it's a Bing maybe.
blue thing.
And it's just blurry and smeary. And so I click down that drop box and I go to a Google map. And it's nice, but it seems to default with this weird smeary map.
Oh, yeah, that's. Sometimes, I mean, what you can have is that this particular button here, clear map cache.
Yeah, maybe
You
I
might
just
use
need to
that
get rid of whatever that-
because there could have been some disturbance on the service at that point for some reason. I don't know.
It's one of the aerial,
Oh, one of the aerials, yeah.
Google maps, or-
Yeah.
But it's not Google, it's Bing or something. It defaults to a weird
Okay.
aerial view.
Is that every time or just
Yeah,
sometimes?
every time. And I have
Well,
to
there's-
scroll down and read.
There is
set
a
it.
default map you can choose,
Yeah, I
but
guess
it
that's
always
right.
picks that map instead.
Yeah, to see what I need to figure it out.
So, okay, yeah.
If you have a planting bed, I mean, you were saying you like took the center point, but so for example, we have some that are like super long and skinny and curved. Is there a way to put like the polygon?
Not in Iris. You obviously would draw the polygon in, and that's exactly the sort of with Iris is sort of a what should we say a pragmatic approach to mapping. We say okay, that's where we stop, and if you want more sophisticated stuff, then you use the link between ArcGIS, for example. Yeah. Okay, so that was mapping. Now you are actually now you can map. You know how to put the marker. You can produce maps. And one thing I didn't say, by the way, when I brought this map up, do it again. It's of course you can then, and that's the key here with integrated mapping. When you work on the records, you saw we got a list of rhododendrons. You can have a list. Some people are very list centric. They like lists. Other are maps, and then they could just. I know a few people with arborism that they instead of searching, they just click here and bring up the whole collection, and then they click on the individual records, and then start working on the records directly from within the map. But that was what did I?
That's a location probably for things that were dead.
Oh yeah, okay.
That area.
Oh yeah, that was So that one was. So here we have a record. I can make changes and go back. So you can sort of do record keeping in a sort of flying over your garden. Yeah. Okay.
And you can print those
Yeah.
Yeah. The
from
maps.
Iris.
Yep.
Actually, that's how I create a mean, I have a task list of plants that need mapped. They were planted over a year ago, so it's time now to go out and map them. So instead of just walking out with a spreadsheet and then trying to find the plants, I print a subset of like a garden area with them all located, then just print that map, and I can say, okay, if I start with this one, I go to this one next, this one. It's like spatially right there in front of you. I can drive the golf cart to the next plant. See, it's in this bed, so it's right next to. I mean, I just know where it's at since I do the garden so well, so I can just drive right to the plant, basically.
Well, those are approximate locations, correct? Because
Yeah, but,
then when you go out with your GPS unit, you're
correct.
getting
When the person, I mean, our policy is when the person plants the plant, they give an estimation. It's 30 feet south of this plant. So I drag and drop a spot where I guess the plant will be.
Yes.
And then I actually hide it from export to the website.
Okay.
I have a special field that says that it can list the name that we have it, but not show it on the map because
Yes.
it's not been located yet.
Uh-huh.
And then once it's mapped out, I clear that, it actually shows the spot.
Okay.
And the maps that you're printing, is it labels on the map?
You
that
decide
it's-
that by switching that on and off. Yeah.
And can you also put like a list on the map?
Well, that was that option with the number that makes the spreadsheet with the numbers. So that's a second list that goes with the map
Very good.
to correlate the two
Uh-huh.
together. So
Okay.
the 13 on
So
the
you have
map
a
is
report
13 on
and
the
the
list.
map? Uh-huh.
Right,
Yeah.
so you have more
Okay,
fields over
great.
here.
Nice. That's handy.
Okay. Invite the doors again. So now I'm just going to go a slightly more advanced example when it comes to accessioning. We're going to record an accession where we don't have the taxa. That happens all the time, obviously. And so the process there, I'm going back to the accession screen. I'm going to clear the screen and start working. Here, I'm going to do, and since we're a bit further south than normal, we're going to go for an agave. Agave Havardi. Havardiana.
What a name.
I actually had a meeting with someone. I'm going to show you what happens when I'm just coming up with a fictitious Taxol, and it actually was one. I didn't know. The reverse sort of luck in terms of doing demos. But anyway, in this typical database, we don't have it. I can't find it. So I will then do, as you saw with the contacts, I can do the same with the taxa. I can click on the ellipsis button here and bring up my taxa screen. And you haven't seen the taxa screen yet, some of you. So the taxa screen is also a bit sort of complex to sort of first impression. But you have the names tab here. So here you got all your names, and you got all your common names down here. And then you have the details about the taxa, distribution and that kind of thing, parentage, images and references.
And I've told you multiple times it's taxon for one and taxa for multiple. But
Yeah,
it just
I
is
keep
what
on.
he always says it, so.
I don't think can't teach an old dog new tricks. I will one day manage that. Sorry. So this particular. So now I accidentally selected. That's one of those tips. I now accidentally selected a taxon before I. So now I've actually selected the Agave Americana. And then I think this is a mistake that some people might do, and I start changing this to Havardiana now, or Havardi. That, of course, causes trouble. So this is important. I need to then clear to start recording a new one. So that, and then here, I start then by, so here you have the name, and it's fully formalized. You see that there's species, infraspecific levels. So I'm just doing agave. I get all my genus coming up here. And then, is it Havardi? I can't. So let's say I just do Havardia. And then I'm going to do a web search. I'm going to check this name. So Iris can hook up to a lot of web searches. On our forum, there's a long list of other things. These can be configured. I'm just going to do the plant list, for example, or catalog of life. Do the plant list. And it didn't find it straight away, so it suddenly gave us agaves instead. You see up here, it's searching for agave Havardia. So I'm just going to look, what is it?
It's a long list, so.
Here we go. So now I see, oh yes, and I also get the author. And that's quite handy. So I'm going to go back, Havadiana, like that. And now, since I saw the author, I can now say we name source, we use the plant list. And this is another thing you saw when I start typing here. This is a drop down that's called self-populated. So it's not a system where you map. The list grows as you use it. And there's another button here to tidy it up retrospectively. So that means that anybody can, if I got this from another source, I can just type that and then it's added to that list. And the other thing that's really nice is I can check the name against International Plant Name Index by clicking this blue button. And then I get, because I changed the resolution, it's a bit crazy here, but so I get 2 entries from the IPNI, and they're they both have the same author. Are you familiar with IPNI, everybody? So it's basically a spell checker for names. All the published names should be there. Also the synonyms. So if you go there and just pick a name, it might not be the right author because it was published several times under the same name. So it's then the trick is to first do a web search to find, or use a source to find out what is the correct, what is the accepted name with which author. So if I do, let's say this one, and Iris will stop you from recording duplicates, but you can have 2 variations on Havardiana if there's 2 different authors. But then one has to be a synonym and the other would be an accepted name. You can't have both of them as accepted name. So I'm now saving that. Okay, so now we recorded this taxon, I'm ready. But I obviously want to do a few more things. I'm going to do web search and I'm going to see if Wikipedia. So here's a question. We like this garden, we think Wikipedia is great, so we don't want to type in all these details about the plants. We're just going to link to Wikipedia if they have anything. And here they say they've written quite a few nice things there. It's also, I want to steal a bit of information from here. For example, the common name. Do they have a common name? Or let's say call this Harvard's agave or something. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to do references, and here you can have reference to websites, and it remembers your last web search. So I can just click this, and then we have the Wikipedia link straight in there. And here you can rank it. So you rank it based on what kind of order of preference this web link should come up. So I'm just ranking this as 1. And then I'm going to go back here and add a common name as well. So we're going to go English and Harvard's agave. There you go. And again, for label production, ranking is also very important. So you can have multiple common names, but you only want one on the label. So the one that's ranked as number 1 will be the one that is produced when you produce label templates. The others will then be typically ranked 2, 3, 4. Anything ranked 9 and higher will not be shown on the website and things like that.
And that goes with images too. If you have images, like we take pictures of maybe a tree trunk that was hit by a mower or a car or something, just to have it documented. I set those as 10s, just so that we have record of them. But on the website, it's not saying, yeah, this is the messed up tree.
So distribution, we could steal that from, no, I'm not going to keep it a bit short here, but here's details you can record about the hardiness, distribution, IUCN red list, etc., etc. And there's also here custom fields, so you can add your own things. On the taxa, you can do the same custom fields on accessions. The other thing that I would like to mention, since we're here, is something called themes, which is very nice if you have a garden that has a certain kind of specific focus on maybe ethnobotany or something like that. Orchids, yeah. So here you could, if you, for example, wanted to record a lot about how this is used in cooking, you can add your own themes on culinary skill, what shall I say, characteristics or something, and then you can write this and publish that online, so that becomes part of your narrative on the website. And are there any here? So it also supports multilingual data. So if you're in this area where there's a lot of Spanish speakers, you can then, for example, or Chinese or Japanese or whatever, you can then record that information in several languages. That's an option to switch on that capability.
And it's not translated, it's actually stored in the actual verbiage that the person would say, rather than sort of a natural translate. It sounds silly.
So I'm not going to record more now, just for the sake of keeping a bit of pace there. Yeah.
One more question about themes. Is that also where collections, like she mentioned orchids, or like say this was part of an agave collection, would you designate that as a theme, or would that go under?
What we found is that with the collection sort of term is, if all your agaves are part of your agave collection, you may not bother because you can just search on the genus anyway. But if you have collection where only subset, because only the wild collected ones are, for example, then you would typically either put an attribute on the taxon, because you're saying any plant of that taxon should be part of that collection, or you go on down to the accession level, because you're picking individual accessions and saying this should be included in the collection, but this is not the part of the collection.
Or like orchids have multiple genera, that you would include with the collection, so you can put that all on.
Yeah, either
Yeah,
here
but you
or
can search by the family.
Family.
yeah. So it's a more like how much effort would you want to put in information that's already there, derived from other things. Yeah.
And where are the attributes stored?
Oh yeah, they're here on the. Oh yeah, they're here on the right.
Yes, in what table, so to speak?
Oh, they're either related to the taxon.
Yes. Okay.
So we can do an example here. Now let's say we wanted to do. We're spinning a bit off and might not fill in all my, but that's okay, I hope. So let's say we wanted to record collection information on the taxon in this case, or maybe no, we do it on the accession, because I'm now working on this agave, so I'm going to go back to my accession.
Or you can do that price thing she talked about.
We do the price as well, or both. Yeah. Select and close, and I'm just going to say it's a garden. I'm just going to save this now because, and then go down and say we want to record the price instead.
All you really need on an accession is a name and a provenance. I mean everything else is nice, but if you just want the basics and to ship this off to some garden to have them fill in the blanks and then re-import it.
So I'm doing custom attributes now. So these are the custom attributes that are in this database. They're all on the taxon, and we're going to put it on the accession. So I'm going to go here and say it's going to be on the accession, and one is called collection. And I'm going to say it's a list. That means that it's a self-populated list, so it just grows as I use it. And then I'm going to make a new one, which is price, which is also just a number, a decimal number. And then I can put it in the format. I can't remember how you do that just now, so I'm just going to keep it like this. And then I can go back to my accession and add price, $50 or pounds or whatever, and then collection. And then you see here now I have nothing to select. I'm just say agave collection, and that's it.
So like in the case of collection, can you make a validation list? So
yeah, you can make a fixed list. Yeah.
A fixed list, so you don't keep
So
adding to
when
it.
I added this attribute, I made a list, but you can also see. Sorry, where I go back to the custom attributes here. If I make it as a code, as you see here, then it's a predefined code. So you will only say we only there's 5 collections, and then you can only pick from those 5. You can do that. Yeah.
Can you do that for the individuals?
Not on
The
not on
items,
no custom fields on individuals.
item.
The items.
No, it's,
You can't do it
it's
for
not
items.
item-based.
No.
It's
Can't do
accession-based.
items, just
Just accessions.
Yeah.
I mean, technically you could, if you had 3 items, you could have 3 entries and then have like an item number with it or something, and sort of,
No,
that just might be clunky.
understand.
Just to keep a bit of pace, I'm not going to go, but what Iris also has the possibility to do is permits, to record permits. If you do handle valid material that has MTAs and things like that.
A prime example is we received a grant from the Forest Service to collect the maple leaf oak in Arkansas. It only occurs on like 4 mountaintops in the state. And one site, well, the state had to give us, or the feds had to give us the national forest permits. And we also had to collect in one site, it was in a state park that's in a national forest. So we had to get a permit from the state park and the national forest. They're both added to that accession under the permits. So I can click on it and view all the text. And it's actually, the scanned document is linked to it. I can download it and print it. So.
Yeah, and to complement the permits, you have also something called restrictions that you can attach to the taxon or the accession or the individual plants. And these are not so good, well designed, the ones that you find in this particular test database.
So
but
you
you
do
typically
make
say this material you're not allowed to share the material, or you can also restrict how it's shared online, so that you don't, if it's very valuable or some theft threat or whatever.
Yeah, that's actually in a different spot too. The CBD is in a
Different stuff.
That's under the taxon.
Yeah.
Entry though, right?
Yeah, it's up here.
Why would it be under tax?
No, CBD is not a field as such, is it? No.
Oh, you could add a restriction for.
Yeah, you define the restriction. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be the accession where it's collected.
Yeah, if it's from the United States, it's not going to be CBD because we're not speaking
Right.
CBD. Right.
But I would add that probably as a custom.
One thing I'm just going to do here is just I didn't show you how to add images, but it's basically click a green button. However, there's one thing to note because you can also with Iris, if you have a lot of photos and you manage your images on a sort of digital asset management system, if that has capabilities of storing or retrieving the data through a fixed URL, you can add the picture by just clicking here instead, and then you have a link to it. And you can also have, like we do with Smithsonian, they have each image has more like an accession number. So then they set it up in that way, so they can just type in the number of the image, and that's linked that way. And they actually feed that through a nightly job, so it's all happened. It slides into Iris automatically. So there are a lot of possibilities on how you manage images, but I'm not going to talk much about that. I'm just going to bring in one picture, see if we have one.
That's advanced.
Pictures.
So it's not your dogs.
No, I'm gonna. Yeah.
Daisy.
Hold on, I'm just gonna do. Where is it? Pictures.
Dogs.
Yeah. Buffalo. Oh, I don't know. Plants. That sounds promising, doesn't it? Clematis montana. I know it's not an agave, okay, but it's a very beautiful picture. So what's happening here is that it's actually, you see, it's it will automatically downscale the pictures for you if you set that up the right way. So down to 3 megapixels, so you can serve a data space. So there are many options there as well. I'm not going to go in details, but this was a high-res picture, 22 megapixel, and it took it down to 3. Yeah.
Does the fixed URL work with multiple images per plant?
Well, the one you take, then you add several pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I took one here, and I just ranked this as 1 instead of 2, and then I can just add another one, and slip it in, and then another one, and another one. And you can also import images through the data import with the URLs.
And again, like all the others, all the 1 through 8s get, or at least the 1 through 9s get put on the website, and the ones that are 10s and higher get hidden. So
Yep.
yeah, it's that same ranking we were talking about, like the common names and everything.
So one thing, I realize that we're sort of, moving forward with the time constraints there, but so I'm going to skip the label production, apart from saying that labels are produced here from item management. Oops, I'm just going to say OK and save this. So from item management, this is really a great tool to update lots of plants in one go. So you can say, okay, all these plants are dead, or I want to produce all my labels for a group of plants. So just to do a label status, yeah, that's how it works. It's very useful. Yeah.
Right, like I've told our our nursery manager, all the ones that need, all the plants that need accession tags, once they're grafted and they're taking hold in the gallon pots and they're starting to get leaves and living, they need to have accession tags. So he flags them as it needs a tag on the record when he pots it up. And I just go through and pull up all the ones that need tags and print them and then hand them to them.
Yeah. So now I search for all the plants that needs label type M1. So that's sort of somebody has marked them as needing label, and then I can create the labels here. And then when I'm done,
if the plant is red is dead, it's not checked, so it's not going to make the tags for dead things.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, instead of doing this way, you can also use what I talked about in the introduction, the events. So I'm going to talk a bit about tasks. So that's a list make. It's called tasks, but it could be called, should be called maybe something else. It could be used to produce a pruning job, for example. So all these trees need to be pruned, or shrubs. Or it could be all these taxa. These are the ones we want to acquire in the next 12 months. So it's a list making function. So it's really handy for all kinds of things, and it's used very.
She's been dying for a question.
Oh, I don't. But I was kind of thinking along the same lines as far as like you're needing to make labels, for example, and you have volunteers that are entering information for you, or anybody for that matter. Can you designate which fields are mandatory to?
No, there's unfortunately not. No.
So there's no guarantee that that information will be there because they could have left that out.
Yeah. So then you need to really run a report, design a report, which push all those fields that you want to put in, and then run through all the plants records that have been added in the last few days, and do it that way maybe. So you can sort of check it that way. Yeah.
What about if you need nursery labels, so they need to come out of a thermal printer?
Yeah.
I have.
We do the same thing.
And then say you want to do accession labels, which are done on an embosser, so that's a different printer.
There are two label types. So you can set one to be the accession tag and one to be the thermal label. And
Okay.
you can have them both as needs labels.
Okay.
So you select all the ones that need accession tags, run those. Update them all in a batch to OK when they're done, and then select all the ones that need thermal labels, run those, update all those to OK, and they're all done.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's how I do it. And then, so like label type 1 for me is always the accession tag, because that's what every plant has to have, an accession tag.
Yes.
Okay, so the display label is my thermal tag or my display label.
Mm-hmm.
And I have different codes, whether it's a pot tag, a slip-on tag, and I have different types of display labels, and I can mark which one it has and which one needs which kind.
Yes, okay.
Okay. So I think with the list making, you see we have time. There's a few things I really want to squeeze in. That is more important. Well, everything is important,
but lists are very powerful.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to show you quickly is for you to visit, and that is all the online websites that are on Garden Explorer. So that's a link to all the websites that are live. So if you want to play with, so that's the whole point. Part of the design here is to make it dead easy for you to manage that whole thing. To put up all website and get your plants online can be a very costly effort. This is very little maintenance for you. You could just press a button. That can also be automated, so you don't even need to press the button. And then the data is then published online, and you control what is made available. The nursery is not going out if you don't want to, and those kind of things. So have a play with that. Look at, for example, a really fantastic collection. It's called the Usability.
I've never heard of it.
There are some cool, if you want to look at sort of multilingual things, it's fun to see the ones in Asia and in Israel, for example, where you have right to left and things like that. So have a play with that. The other thing I wanted to talk about a bit was mobile data. So we are in the process of, so I'm now running my smartphone here. So this is available for download. It's in beta, or if you have an Android. We're going to make it available on iOS as well, but that will happen after the summer. So if you go on Play Store and search for IrisBG, you can download this and play with several data sets. Oops. The timing here is a bit. Oops. So explore other gardens is what you do if you run the beta. And here I have already downloaded Cambridge, but you can also download a really nice garden here called the Dawes Arboretum if you want to. So the point here is to get your plant collections, you push it out to the cloud, and then users can then get the data onto the smartphone. And so I'm going to search for a collection here. So hold on, I'm just going to, and then here we're going to do, you can search for accession number, item, and Taxol. You can search near me. So if you're out in the garden, give me all the plants that are just around me. I'm just going to do an example here of searching for all the acers. So you see, because it's so what you have here is a copy of the database on the machine, so it also works even if you have no connectivity whatsoever. Do we do all the acers here? And you get a result. We've got 203 acers, and then I can do a map. It's a bit crowded, but I can then zoom in, and you see, because I already have the map on this phone, it really is very sort of smooth, and then I can click on the marker and see, okay, that's the Acer davidi subspecies grocery, and I'll open that up, whatever it was.
That's the grocery.
Grocery.
Your grocery is where you buy your bread.
I thought it was a grocery one.
So you're putting together a shopping list for your plants.
So here we got one plant. If there were more, they come up, and you see down here you have the items. So I can then update. Okay, this is inspected. This is dead. And the nice thing is also you get the full mapping capabilities. I can then go in here and edit location, move it down here, and go in and take a picture. And when you're done for the day, you go back. You save it if you want. I can save it. That's okay. And then you go here and you click upload, and it's pushed to the cloud. And then either yourself or somebody at the office will synchronize it back in. You can check the data that's been entered before it goes into the system. So this is really also great for if you want to have junior staff or volunteers doing work, and you can then check it before it goes in.
So we're talking about getting some of the ruggedized tablets, Android tablets, and have the curators that are planting trees. We go ahead and enter the date and the site and map it right where they're at, and I can pull it down, check it, make sure it's accurate, and we're all good to go.
Yeah. This is if we are on the exhibit tomorrow as well, you can come and have a look at this particular one. It's quite cool. It's a watertight, sort of not bulletproof, but quite sort of rugged, shockproof. Yeah. Okay.
So you can see all of your mapped accessions in there already as you're going out to the field.
Yeah.
So when you are mapping, you can see that you want to place that particular one between this tree and that tree.
Right, like I get, with my GPS, I get a pretty good reading, down to like 4 inches. But if there are 3 plants in a triangle, and for some reason maybe I have some leaf cover or something and it's not quite optimal, and I get 2 good ones here, but the third one is like a kilter off to the side, I can just pick it up and drag it back into that triangle. So I can field check it as I map it.
Yep. So yeah, but this is just bear in mind if you download it, it's in beta. It will be made available generally in August or September, I think, sort of for purchase, and this will we will add more features to it. This is the focus now is to be able to update plants. The list making function is sort of available already, so you can prepare what people are going to do if I do more. You can see here that I can under event, I can get a list of all. So you can prepare things that you're going to do out in the field with this machine, for example. Okay, so I went a bit fast on a certain few things. We have 4 more minutes for very difficult questions or very simple questions, or I can do a few more things, squeeze in at the end.
Yeah, song and dance.
So,
Yeah.
I need to quickly pull up for management how many orchids I have, the genera, the species, and the value of the collection. Like, is that something you can just put all that in? And
There's some really great reports here under statistics. That might be the one you want, because you you have a few reports here called collection count. That gives you, this is really great for the annual. It just gives you so many, wild collected, so many, etc. I'm just going to do this one just to show you. And they can be customized. I'm just doing the full collection here of the trial gardens, which is not that big. And then there are the sum reports. These are really great, which you can then create to create totals on the levels you want. So you can have so many per family, per genus, per species, etc. This was a bit slow on this machine, yeah. But yes, this is the kind of, I know. Yeah, here we go. So you see here, we've got so many species, determined, not determined, etc. So a lot of those kind of ready-made reports, and this is the kind of thing we have with the community anyway. Questions like that, we try to answer them. So if the system doesn't have it, we'll try to put it in one way or another. One thing I didn't show either, which is sort of a lot of things I didn't show actually, but I was thinking with when you work on these accessions and everything else, what this gentleman there asked about updating. You saw we updated the number of plants in one operation. You can also update a lot of accessions. Sort of maybe you want to work on improving your taxonomy. You can do things like this. You can search for all your let's say I'm just going to do ACE or whatever. Search on them, and then you can select them all, and then you can go here and update them all in one go. They have the same attribute or the same life form. So there's a lot of those kind of hidden tools as well. So, yeah.
So what if you've done that and it was a mistake?
If we did that and it was a mistake, then there are two ways. If you have, we have a cloud database service which has continuous backup. So the backup, we can restore the data at any point. That's quite handy. Nobody's asked for it, but it's just like it's like there's an airbag in your car. You haven't tested it yet. So that's. But if you certain things are not sort of reversible. So yeah.
This would be like you would say the family changed, like you would for all a search for something.
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't do now, the family change. But that's if you are coming to the first stage, that's when we go for these kind of things.
And there is a way to search for all the things edited at a certain time point. So everything was edited after the current day, you can go through manually and change
And you
things
can see
back.
the history.
Yeah.
So you could manually change them.
Well, there's no history on the Taxol because it doesn't show old names it used to be. It's only on the accession 306.
Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Okay.